Nice, 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 nice. GA everyone, wherever you guys tuning in from. Welcome to today Ecosystem Hour, uh, featuring Pryzm today and hosted by us, Amplifies. My name is Dai, and I'll be your host today alongside with my co-host Simon, co-founder of Amplifies. Simon, how's it going?
Good, good. Excited for these spaces with Ollie and Prism. So yeah, keen to dig into some crazy financial engineering. It's going to be
Yeah,
a good one.
cool. Ollie, maybe you can say something.
Yeah, yeah, no. Also, very much looking forward to it. I think probably we've been chatting for years, and this is our first one of these together. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I think we have a pretty much packed agenda today, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. Okay, maybe let's start something simple, like what exactly is Prism, and maybe we can start with the name. I just asked Oli about the name, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So Prism is a layer one blockchain built using the Cosmos SDK, and the aim of that blockchain is it's specializing in everything to do with tokenizing and trading yield. So in the first instance, what we do is we take in a yield bearing token. So that can be a liquid stake token or a deposit token from a money market or a treasury bearing token, a treasury yield bearing token like USDY. And we take in those tokens and then we split out the yield and principal component. And why we're called Prism is, a prism takes light and refracts light into its separate colors. And so it's a bit of a play on that, in that we take in tokens and we refract them into their yield and principal components. And so I guess like what sets Prism apart is that we're laser focused on yield. So we are not we're a specialized app chain. We're not just a general purpose blockchain, and we're kind of building an entire ecosystem around harvesting, trading, and utilizing yield in innovative ways. And so that is all. The fundamental of all of that is by splitting tokens into their yield and principal component.
We actually had a spaces, funny enough, recently. Some of our audience was trying to wrap their head around something similar. We had a spaces that were with a platform that we're partnering with that do this with nodes. And so they took nodes and they split them into like sort of the node itself and some of the future emissions of the node. And so, yeah, maybe it's a good kind of follow on from that on explaining the workings of prisms and how yield splitting works and the benefits of it, as well as like, yeah, sort of your vision for that and how that comes over from like some of the things you see in TradFi now fitting into like blockchain. But yeah, I think we're going to go down the rabbit hole in this spaces.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Yeah, so you're right. Obviously, like fundamentally, the reason that we're doing this is because it's a huge market in TradFi, and there is no, there's a very nascent market for it now in DeFi, but in TradFi, it's by far the largest derivative market out there. It dwarfs the FX market, it dwarfs the options market, it dwarfs the fixed income market. So interest rate swaps and yield swaps in TradFi is a $600 trillion market. And in DeFi at the moment, it's kind of nothing. And one of the things in DeFi, in TradFi, you obviously have, you have equities, you have commodities, you have fixed income instruments, you have FX, etc. Like DeFi is so heavily geared towards yield, but it doesn't really have a lot of these primitives that allow you to do capital efficient things with your yield. And so that's the fundamental reason that we built Prism, is that we believe that the proportion of DeFi market share, which is yield tokenization and yield swaps and yield trading, will mimic what we see in TradFi. And so we think the market for it is absolutely enormous. And particularly with some of the unique characteristics of DeFi, where with tokens, token emissions, different types of yield source. So that's kind of like the main reason that we've done it. And our view is, in order to do this efficiently and in a scalable way, you need to be your own app chain that completely controls the vertical stack, not just the technology stack, but also the revenue stack. So being completely sort of top to bottom integrated is why we've done that. And so we have yield tokenization. We create internal liquid stake tokens. We also take in external liquid stake tokens. We also actually separate out governance from tokens as well. So it's all about breaking tokens into their core components. So yield, principal, and governance. We have a specialized AMM that handles trading tokens with maturities, which is something very unique. And then, we also enable restaking to secure our chain restaking allows you to earn yield. You don't have to choose between being a liquidity provider and earning swap fees and incentives, or being a delegator and securing the chain. With restaking, you can do both. So it's a lot more capital efficient. So that's kind of like a bit about the background, I guess, and like why we're building it.
Maybe break down like the early days of Pryzm. Like, when did you start? Where did you start? Interesting enough, like I think I might have had seen some stuff around Pryzm before you guys even launched on Terra in the first place, because I was actually in charge of working with Bread and Beyond on all the Terra videos. So, all those highly animated videos that were like rolled out for like, what is Terra, and then going into like the ecosystem. I believe you were one of the first ecosystem applications to actually run your video with Bread and Beyond through TFL. And I remember going through it sort of like rolled out a PDF, and the PDF would actually like, it would break down how the animations would play out and how they explained your model and how Pryzm worked. And then they would turn it into animation, and then the voiceover would kick over. And so I was behind the scenes on a lot of this stuff, because I was writing scripts and directing kind of a lot of these PDFs and doing a lot of stuff. And I remember when the Pryzm video actually came out, or at least before the video came out, and then it got produced, and it was pretty awesome and everything like that. Was that before you launched, or like before you kind of released, or was it afterwards? I remember that was my first exposure to Pryzm back in the Terra days.
So I guess like the history of it was, I was working in TardFi. I guess like I spent most of my career in fixed income at JP Morgan, and then my last few years working with high yield debt and derivatives at Goldman Sachs. And then I kind of fell down the rabbit hole a little bit on DeFi, and then I ended up listening to a couple of bits by Nova Gratz, who started talking about how there was actual DeFi happening, where there was actual real revenue being paid out block by block. And at the time, he was talking about Chai on the Terra blockchain, and how that was actually generating real revenue. Obviously, a lot's happened since then. But that kind of like really piqued my interest, because I was working in fixed income. I was like, okay, if there's actual real cash flows now in DeFi being generated by real world usage and real activity, then I think that's something super interesting. And then I started messing around a little bit on Terra, and Anchor then came around, and I saw that there was this kind of like 20% yield on Anchor on stable coins. In my mind, I was like, well, there's some huge kind of correlation between what you can do in TardFi and what you could do in Anchor if you developed a product like Pryzm. And so I then ended up riding off to Doe and TFL at the time, and saying, look, I have this idea for a product that splits out yield from principal, and I'm not really sure about the best way to kind of like progress this into kind of an actual protocol. And at that time, and I wrote off to quite a few people. So I wrote off to Doe, I wrote off to Delphi, a couple of other people, and Doe was the only one actually that responded. And he was like, look, we'd love to kind of like help you build it. Really like the idea. And so then Doe put me in touch with some engineers from his side, and then also Jump Crypto. And so we ended up building a very, rudimentary version of tokenization on Pryzm. So it was kind of like me, TFL, and Jump Crypto. And then I guess there were lots of limitations to building as smart contracts on another blockchain. And then after Terra imploded, sort of went back to the drawing board and was like, okay, well, we obviously went our separate way. I went my separate ways with TFL and Jump Crypto, and we kind of all, had our own kind of directions that we went after the Terra crash.
Tell the story of AMPS. Tell the story of AMPS, because I think that's a really interesting story from building. How this was it an accidental feature that was because of the limitations of smart contracts that ended up being like one of the stickiest features of the actual application.
Exactly. We're trying to find a way to reward people that were kind of like coming and regularly using the app. I can't remember. There was a protocol. I think it was on Avalanche at the time that was doing something interesting, and we took a bit of inspiration from that. And basically, it's sort of, if you came and collected your yield daily from your daily, it actually added like an even bigger multiplier onto your rewards the next time round when you came and collect. So it kind of incentivized everyone to come and check out the platform and kind of like regularly interact. And then obviously if you ever, ended up with a lower amount of tokens because you sold some or something like that, your whole AMP's kind of like reset to zero. So it's kind of like, good like DeFi fun and games and experimentation. And I think people like that.
Was it a feature or a byproduct of the app? Because I remember someone telling me that it wasn't intentional in the first place, right? It was something to do with like the way the contracts were built that you needed to do it, or was it like built in from a gamification perspective from the start?
No. I mean, we sort of had it. We basically started from a blank whiteboard of like, how do we reward people who are staying engaged and kind of reward people that collect their Pryzm rewards, but then compound their Pryzm rewards. And so we started with a blank page of that, and then we went through a ton of iterations to try and find something that would end up working. And I think one of the guys from Jump Crypto, who was helping us build at the time, was ended up coming up with an implementation that worked well. But it was like smart contracts definitely made it a lot harder to do that than it would have been if we'd been our own app chain at the time. So yeah, so that was that, and then we ended up and then after the crash in 22, me and the CTO who joined at the time, who was working at Terra before but had left Terra and then ended up joining Pryzm just before the crash. So it was just when we went our separate ways with TFL, it was kind of like just me and him left, and like a couple of other people on the team, and then we sort of sat down and were like, okay, what do we do now? Like we really believe in the product. There were lots of limitations to what we were doing before. Do we go build as a subnet on Avalanche? Do we go build a smart contracts on Ethereum or Solana or something? Or if we want to build the best product possible, like the thing that we ended up arriving at was we needed to build our own app chain. And so we've been doing that basically since May 2022.
Wow, amazing story. So walk me through maybe like why Cosmos? Why did you pick Cosmos SDK to do this? And then maybe some of the like, I know this is a kind of big question in general, but some of your biggest learnings, right, while going through this journey. So obviously Terra collapsed, and many of us were part of the Terra ecosystem, or building on Terra, or involved, and got kind of smashed pretty hard and didn't stop straight afterwards. But tell me, like, since then as a builder, going through like a different market, a bear market, or whatever it is, what have been some of your biggest learnings as a founder, as a builder, while building Pryzm in an app chain, either technical or product based or whatever? And why choose Cosmos? I know there's two separate questions, but maybe just like
So I think we went from Terra, which was the situation in Terra was amazingly strong community and huge liquidity in Terra. And the limitation was building with smart contracts. So we were able to build a product, bootstrap it up to 900 million TVL, loads of really engaged users and a great community, but the product was subpar. Like it wasn't what we wanted to design really. And then we almost went the other way with an app chain where we were like, okay, well, we're trying to build something for the long term. How do we build the very best product that we can build? And if you're building with smart contracts, you're limited to, basically, if you build with an app chain, you've got two choices. You can build with modules or you can build with smart contracts. And so we ended up arriving at a situation where it's like, well, why wouldn't we have both tools in our arsenal? So we give ourselves both the option to build with modules or smart contracts. And the great thing about modules is you can put in lots of logic that gets executed automatically by the chain. So it doesn't require someone sending a message in to do a swap or sending a message in to like execute a transaction. Like the chain can automatically update and upgrade things. And so that's why we've, all our features basically end up using modules. So we had the choice to build with modules or smart contracts, and pretty much every single thing on Pryzm is built with modules, which I think shows how powerful modules are when you have the choice to build with modules. And so we did that. And then I think at the time, Cosmos was kind of a bit fragmented, but IBC was super powerful. ICA was super powerful. Like we can't, there was no other liquid staking protocols really on Cosmos at the time that we started building. And so we were looking at like, okay, well, maybe we have to create our own liquid stake tokens, which we ended up doing. And to do that, you can use this thing called interchain accounts, which basically is a very cool feature powered by IBC, the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, where you can control an account. Your chain can control an account on another blockchain. So for us, what does that mean? That means we have a interchain. Pryzm, the chain itself, has an interchain account on Celestia. It has one on Injective. It has one on the Cosmos Hub. And so Pryzm can send over tokens to that can stake those tokens, collect staking rewards, undelegate those tokens, vote on proposals on those chains. And all of that is done and controlled by the Pryzm blockchain itself. So that's something very unique that doesn't really exist anywhere else. It's almost like having roll-ups, but way more powerful. And so that was like a big thing. It's like once we realized the power of like interchain accounts, that was great. And then the challenge of building in Cosmos that probably we underappreciated because we'd been so used to it with Terra was the community and the liquidity side. Like liquidity in Cosmos is very fragmented. Community can be a little fragmented and PvP. And so that's the side of it that I hope is, hopefully is changing a bit. We're building a really strong community ourselves. Like as an app chain, you're kind of like trying to get people to your new L1. We've had good success. I think now we've got sort of some 40 odd thousand, 50 odd thousand wallets now connected and using Pryzm, which for us is great as a complex product. But yeah, like I think that's the challenge, but also the reason that why we're super excited about the product that we built.
Cosmos is really interesting because the challenge with Cosmos is the tech is really advanced. Like IBC is incredible, and the stuff you can do with these app chains is incredible, but it really struggles with the distribution side of things. It's two fronts, right? One is some parts of infrastructure in Cosmos have been difficult, like the fact that this IBC is great, but the UX on top of IBC isn't always great. And the second part is that the distribution is really challenging. Whereas Solana, you have like a foundation that's being able to drive and get that mass velocity, which creates the distribution. Maybe the tech isn't as good and the products are not as good, but that distribution of the liquidity is so important. And so it's going to be really interesting to, like, I think the two angles is one sort of, the new chain foundation with Cosmos, leading and being able to bring in liquidity and users, investors, and all this sort of stuff, fixing the UX of IBC and making that like less fractured experience. And the third one, I think, is going to be like the rise of chain abstraction. Like as we abstract more of like chains themselves, it's like, how do we create experiences that transcend, multiple different blockchains as opposed to like worshipping the islands? right? We don't want to worship islands anymore. We want to see kind of chains as a united thing. And there's been this chat's been on for a lot, going on for a long time. But eventually, you know, you want to get to a place where, you know, you're interacting with a layer sitting on top of the blockchains, and the blockchains aren't even a relevant part of the active user experience. But we're still a while away from that.
Yeah, but I agree with that. I think like there's some really positive things happening, as you mentioned, with Skip being taken over by the Interchain Foundation. I think bringing everything in-house. There was a great article that was published on it yesterday about, you know, previously they were effectively like outsourcing individual bits like the Cosmos SDK stack, you know, IBC, you know, other bits to kind of Hypher and Informal. I think now they're bringing all of that in-house. I think it's going to allow for a much more unified experience. I also think, you know, you ended up in a situation where, because Cosmos didn't have CosmWasm, so it didn't have an environment, you know, for people to build apps on it. You ended up in this situation where chains would just take the whole Cosmos SDK and add basically nothing to it except CosmWasm or enable CosmWasm, and then you have all these kind of like general purpose chains that are in a way value destructive for the Cosmos Hub itself, because Cosmos Hub could have had all of that revenue and a lot more security if the Cosmos Hub had been, you know, had just enabled CosmWasm. So I think that's gonna change, and general purpose chains like a Juno or a Terra or something at the moment, you know, will need to have some kind of like unique selling point in order to do that. I think Neutron has it a bit with these, you know, some of these kind of like cron job modules that they've created and that sort of thing. But you know, chains will need to be suitably differentiated from Cosmos to kind of make themselves a bit more relevant, I think.
And it's not just product. It's not just the product of these chains. It's the leadership. I think one of the issues is Cosmos probably wasn't ready for permissionless CosmWasm in the past because it lacked the leadership to build a strong ecosystem on top of it. I think like you need both pieces. Like I know we talk about decentralization being important, but you do also need like, it's kind of like you need funding behind, right? You need a foundation that's actually able to pull everything together in the early stages until you get the velocity. I think with Solana, they've reached like a peak where you get these individual organizations like the super teams and the turbines that sort of create these dev shops that build on top of it. And so the Solana Foundation is still important, but it sort of ends up being less relevant because the velocity of the ecosystem is taken off to the point where, sure, they're maintaining the chain, everything like that, but the ecosystem might grow in a way that's like self-replicating. You know, people are building, they don't even know who they are. But in the early stages of building an ecosystem, you really need to be able to like foster this, like it's kind of like having kids, right? And just like fostering this like tight-knit environment, this ecosystem that really needs a lot of watering, a lot of distribution, it needs a lot of marketing. Apps almost in the early stages of a new ecosystem struggle to market themselves because there isn't that natural distribution. So for an app to market itself, the leverage that they have is a lot lower. And this is probably something you've experienced with Pryzm. It's like the work that an L1 has to do to actually market itself and bring community is substantial because you're actually having to do the job of what a layer 1 is and what an app is doing. You notice like this in the Cosmos, apps that are building on chains in Cosmos do struggle because they have only certain power, like their token is only worth so much. So if they're distributing like rewards, they're only able to go this far. Same thing with like their backers. Maybe they're tier 1s, but mostly probably tier 2 or tier 3s. So they don't have the same like channels as like the really big L1s have. So the L1's almost responsibility of the foundation is somewhat of that marketing of the ecosystem to help bring liquidity in so the apps can thrive. And then you do get outliers when an app is so good that it actually makes a chain relevant, but that's actually the exception rather than the rule. In the early stages, like there's a bit of a like, it's a kind of like a relationship between app and chain. They need to work together to get like the growth and the exposure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think you have to, the path we've taken on that is because we've been product focused rather than, you know, because we're not just a general purpose blockchain, we have a product that we're trying to, you know, educate people on how to use. We've been more focused on that than on the marketing side. Like if we'd been part of an L1 that was more general purpose, then maybe they would have been able to help us on the marketing side. Like I think what we're trying to do now is create it so that the early users, because we're under marketed basically, that actually in a way provides great opportunity for early users to come and use the product, earn tokens through using the product, and then almost like get in before the thing is, overhyped, over marketed, etc., etc. And then you kind of, the hope is that if you're making your early users successful and rewarding them, more than substantially, then hopefully they become your biggest advocates and they become your marketing, and they can help you, form the backbone of a strong community going forward. But it's definitely a longer term bootstrapping process than maybe just launching on an L1 that already has quite a lot of hype and activity around it. I think there was an article in this article that was published yesterday as well. Like, I think it was pretty cool to see that the Interchain Inc., as it is now collaborating with Injective on an EVM module. That means that, Ethermint, that means that people are going to be able to use Cosmos properly with MetaMask, have like a proper native experience with MetaMask, that you're going to have ERC20 tokens become bank module tokens, which basically means that Cosmos users are going to be able to interact with the ERC contracts, EVM Solidity-based contracts and modules at the same time. I think there's some really interesting stuff that's going to go on with that, and to see big foundations like the ICF and Injective collaborating on stuff, I think is pretty cool.
I was talking to Barry about this. We had a call. Was it Noam? Either they were talking about bringing native MetaMask signing to the hub, and just I think they've got a stacked pipeline of things that are just critical to distribution and growth, which have been neglected for so long as an ecosystem. So that'll be. I think
IBC Eureka is going to be a huge one for the ecosystem as well. When you can transfer over, when you just use IBC, which I always touch wood whenever I talk about bridges, just because you don't want to sit there and say a bridge has never had a serious issue. But IBC is so battle tested and I think skips IBC Fun, or Skip Go, I guess it's called now. There's 80% of the volume over IBC or something like that, and so it's such a seamless way of sending tokens or swapping tokens between one chain and another, that with IBC Eureka, where now you'll be able to do that, in a couple of months, you'll be able to do that with EVM chains as well. I think it's going to be a huge step change for Cosmos. So I think Solana's going to be coming later, I think. But EVM is going to be I think hopefully March or April is what they're saying. But yeah, Solana as well, when they do go live with that, will be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that opens up the gateways, right? Massively, in a huge way. I think, something actually from what you said around marketing and the kind of protocol you built, I think this is a really good lesson to be learned from the way that Hyperlane ran, and also the way that Pendle ran in the early stages. Because I believe Pendle struggled in the really, really early stages, right? Because they had built this complex model, and they were struggling to get liquidity or distribution on top of it. And I think the secret was finding that right source between writing the narratives in the market. So I think with Pendle, I think what they did with Pendle, if I'm correct, is that they shifted to, they found all these point opportunities that were popping up, or there was these kind of chains, and they really latched on to where the mind share was, and they managed to really kind of ride the back of where the mind share was pointing to, and really making the most of it. So it's okay, now Bera's launching, so then they would target Bera or Initia, or they would really tap into those opportunities that were right at the front of the mind. And Hyperlane is actually how not Hyperliquid, sorry. It's also how Hyperliquid got really relevant with, they were building an island by themselves, off of Arbitrum, but they were really product focused. But if they didn't have distribution, they probably wouldn't be where they are now, even with a great product. So what they actually did really well was they were the first to launch pre-markets for Hype token, for specific tokens coming up. So I remember when Dimension launched, Celestia, they were one of the first to just be a huge market for the pre-market for these tokens. And that was huge in terms of being able to extract it, tap into that mind share and where it was at, and then bring them to yourselves. And so I think there's a huge lesson around that, and how to really get users into a great product, but then tapping into that distribution channel so you can capture the mind share that's out there in the market.
Yeah, agreed. The pre-launch markets were a big thing, and I think, as you say, for Pendle, I think there weren't, people weren't that excited about trading ETH yield when ETH was kind of a stable 4% yield or something like that. And so that sort of didn't generate too much traction. But the moment you start shoving points on top of it, these things, as they did with EtherFi and lots of these, Renzo and lots of these other ETH LRTs, I think there was some, that suddenly got people really excited. And and then obviously I think, one of the biggest boons for Pendle was Athena. I think Athena makes up something like 4 billion or 3 billion or something of Pendle's TVL. And I think that, that became a brilliant one. Like, what it took was like a matching of.
Restaking kind of took it to like a pretty heavy level, and then Athena just jumped on top. Right?
Exactly, and Athena, and I think like Athena just amped it up another level, and it took having a bit of a battle tested formula that Pendle had used with restaking, plus Athena going super hard on it to really kind of like send Pendle stratospheric. And I think like Cosmos, the reason we're partly very excited about the kind of the chains that we're connected with is like Cosmos actually has real cash flows and a real yield, whereas like in Ethereum these are points, so they're not like block by block cash flows. They're tokens at the end of a points campaign that you receive of an unspecified number, sometimes at an unspecified time. So I think there's some, I think longer term you'll need actual cash flows to kind of like make the product and protocol sustainable. And so I think that's something that happens a lot in IBC connected chains that we're excited about. And I know, obviously you and I have spoken about products that use cash flows. We're using one ourselves to launch our, cash flows at the moment to launch our own token where people can exchange their yields for Pryzm tokens. And so I think there's lots of really interesting things that you can do when you start exchanging actual cash flows.
Yeah, amazing. We've had some big chats about this. Maybe let's go into a little bit of like, I know it's going to be hard to go into like the heavy workings of Pryzm on this call, because maybe we might have an audience that's a little bit that maybe isn't as technical. But maybe the straight, like, is this following your agenda, Dai? Just checking that we're not going completely up the rabbit hole.
Yeah, just checking the agenda. I feel like we have like really covered everything, like mostly everything. But maybe we can touch a little bit on stake growth.
Yeah. I can do that. I think stake drop actually kind of just fits into what we were talking about earlier, Simon. Really, it's like we were sat there as an island, an L1 island, thinking to ourselves like, okay, when we launch our product, we're going to want people to bring over their Atom, Tier, Inge, Osmo, and come and try out yield trading on Pryzm. Like, how do we're an L1. We haven't done we're trying to community bootstrap things. We don't want to pay a load of calls and shillers and, give a load of tokens to VCs. We want to try and get awareness out there in the community, the interchain community, that there's a product being built and it's based around yield. And so we ended up launching Stake Drop, where we basically said, look, we're going to run validators on these chains. We're going to try and generate some revenue on the validators to help fund our operations. We are going to reward people that delegate to us and support us. One of the problems with validator airdrops in the past is they've not given a clear formula about what the rewards are that you're earning. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to give a very clear formula that for each $1 of commission you pay, you're going to earn 10 Pryzm tokens. And we're going to set up validators and go out there and hopefully use this as a way to introduce Pryzm to people and find out, A, who's happy to support Pryzm, and B, hopefully find people that will be happy to come and use Pryzm when the actual chain goes live. And so that went or has been going, really well. Like, we have 550,000 wallets that participated in it. I think we're the most popular validator in terms of number of delegators on the Cosmos Hub, Celestia, Injective. I think Injective, maybe not Injective, but yeah, that's done really well, and I think it's helped us bootstrap Pryzm when we were our own L1, and there's a little more UX and a little more complexity to people for people dealing with L1s. So that's Stake Drop, and Stake Drop's going to carry on and continue after the token launch as well. and it's suitable for people that are delegating and just don't want to move their assets and use them in DeFi. But for people that do want to use their assets in DeFi, we have our Photons campaign, which you can use your Atom, your USDC, your USDT, your TIA, your Injective, and you can earn much higher rewards if you come over and use Pryzm DeFi. So it's like an entry gate into Pryzm.
This is a perfect like a perfect segment into. I'm a user. Let's say I'm a DeFi user. I'm not super advanced. I'm maybe a dabbler. I stake. I use money markets. I use DEXs. I'm not like a gigabrain financial guy that comes from BlackRock. But I find out about Pryzm and I want to come and use Pryzm. I hear good things about it. What can I do on Pryzm? So give me some options. Maybe like simplify it as much as you can. But what can I actually go and do? I've got maybe some Atom. I've got some USDC. Like, what can I come and do? What can I do on Pryzm? What are the benefits and what can I actually get out of it?
Yeah, so we're running our rewards campaign at the moment, which basically there are like multiple different levels. You can do stuff that's really low risk and earn some rewards. You can try stuff that's a bit more medium risk and earn higher rewards, or you can do much higher risk stuff and earn kind of maximum rewards doing that. So if you're an entry level user, you can do what we call turbo liquid staking. So rather than normal liquid staking where you deposit a token and receive a liquid stake token in return, with Pryzm, what you're going to do is you're going to deposit your Atom and you're going to receive an Atom yield token and an Atom principal token. And the Atom yield token gives you all of your Atom, the underlying Atom staking yield. And the Atom principal token gives you the right to claim back your Atom after the period you choose, either 3 months or 6 months or a year or whichever time period you choose. So the yield token gives you all of the yield for, say, 12 months, and the principal token gives you the right to claim back your Atom in a year's time. Now, you don't have
ownership of the asset. So wait, let's just simplify. Ownership of the asset on one hand, the P token.
Yeah.
So this is like, let's say I've got a car. This is after 3 months, I get my car back, right? So it's ownership of the asset itself.
Exactly.
That asset has a yield, right? Y token is the yield of the asset. So let's say it earns 15% per year, right? This token represents that it strips the yield from the main asset and separates it out into a separate token. This represents the yield. This represents the ownership. So if I own this asset, I don't have the ownership. If I own just this asset, the Y, I don't have the ownership, right? If I own just the ownership, I'm not getting the yield. So just like simplifying it as easy as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd almost say, imagine I deposit my money into a bank account. I have $100 that I deposit into a bank account, and the bank gives me a token that's going to give me the yield of my $100 over the next year, and it's going to give me another token that lets me go and claim my $100 back in a year's time. So that's like how it works with like just $100 in a bank account, one token that gives you all of the savings interest that you get on the $100, and one token that allows you to get your $100 back in a year's time if you want. And both of those tokens are liquid and have their own price and their own market demand that determines where they're trading. But obviously, if you deposit $100 into a bank, you're going to receive 2 tokens back, and those 2 tokens are going to be worth $100. So the yield token might be worth $10, which means the principal token's worth $90. Or if the yield token's worth $20, the principal token's worth $80. And so that's how it works. So if you deposit your $100 into the bank account and someone is paying $10 for a yield token, then I might come to you, Simon, and I might say, okay, well, I'll buy your yield token off of you for $10. I think the bank is going to pay out 20% interest this year. So if I buy your yield token off you now for $10, I'm going to receive $20. I think I'm going to receive $20 over the next year, which means I'm going to double my money. You're happy because you're like, I'm going to receive $10 up front, so I'm pretty happy. Like I've locked in my yield. I'm receiving my $10. That's great. I've got other uses for that cash now. And for me, I'm taking the risk that the bank might increase the savings rate or it might decrease the savings rate, in which case I lose money. So if the bank pays out less than $10 over the next year, I've lost money. But if the bank does pay out the $20 that I'm expecting, I've doubled my money. So that kind of, I don't know whether the bank's a good example.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to simplify it for the end users because I think like I love these kind of puzzles because it's easy to like take analogies and you sort of break it down into its fundamental steps and go, how do we explain this to users where they, in language they can understand? And that's something I've always enjoyed doing. I think the key as well, like even if we take out the future variability of the yield, it's also thinking about like an advance on your yield, right? So let's say I got Atom that earns 15%. And I go, okay, I got this Atom. I want to keep this Atom, but I want the yield up front. I need the cash for something else. You go like, I need this 15% now, right? I don't want to sell my Atom. So I am willing to sell that 15% for 13% for a discount because I get it up front. So maybe it goes, I'm going to sell my future yield now for a discount. And, I'm going to get my money up front. And then, I could use that money and then I'm okay losing that yield over time because I know that maybe having that 15% now is going to make me more than 15%. Maybe it's investing that 15% into an opportunity that I think is going to make me 10x. And so I take the loss, maybe it's a 10% discount, 20% discount, or whatever the market decides to pay for that. And then someone on the other side might go, I'm okay waiting the whole year to claim the yield. I'm not in no rush. I'd rather actually buy this yield at a discount and then make more money. And so someone on the other side, and I know that it's much more nuanced than this because you actually get like variable yield and this whole equation of people predicting where the yield's going to go. But at its simplest form, it's like on one side, someone can sell their yield in advance. And on the other side, someone can actually go and, essentially buy discount passive income or like, it's buying yield that's going to pay out over time at a discount, right? On the other side of the coin, the principal token, with the principal token, someone might actually like, obviously split out, keep the yield and sell that like principal token, allowing someone on the other side to buy a principal token at a discount on the market. So someone might actually sell their principal token. So they keep the yield, they relinquish like ownership of the asset. Maybe it's to buy more Y tokens because they go, okay, I'm going to let go of this Y token is at such a discount that I could sell more P tokens to buy more Y tokens to increase my passive income. And someone on the other side takes the principal token and goes, I'm happy to wait until maturity to claim that token back. And they get Atom at, Atom at a discount. And so that's a form of fixed yield as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you might be like, there might be a project that says, okay, we're going to reward, do an airdrop to Atom stakers, and we're also going to include Pryzm Atom yield token holders on Pryzm in this airdrop. So you might think to yourself, well, look, I don't want to hold the Atom token because I'm worried in the short term that it's going to go down in price, but I do want to get my staking yield and I do want to get this airdrop. So you might go and take your principal token and your yield token. You might sell the principal token, but keep your yield token, collect the staking rewards and the airdrop. And then you might, if Atom price goes down as you expect it to, you're actually able to buy your principal token back cheaper than you sold it for. So that you have kind of that side of it. And then you can also, you can do what you're saying, like you can either sell your future yield, or like another very simple way of doing it is saying, okay, well, I've got 100 Atom and I want to know that I'm definitely going to have 100 Atom in 3 months time. So I'm going to take my 100 Atom and I'm going to buy 100 Atom principal tokens. And those 100 Atom principal tokens might only cost me 95 Atom or 90 Atom, we're seeing at the moment. So then you're left over. So you've bought your 100p Atom and you know that you're going to get 100 Atom back in 3 months, but you're left with the 5 or 10 Atom that you didn't spend to buy the 100p Atom. And so that way you've got that yield up front that you can use. And in TardFi, what happens is exactly what you're saying there. Like someone will do that. Someone will sell buy 100 p Atom and use the residual that's left over, and they'll go and spend that money on options, or they'll go and spend that money on leveraged perps, or in TardFi futures or something like that. So in a way, you're like, well, I'm happy taking that money up front because, as you were saying, I'm actually just spending my future yield right now, and I'm happy to go like YOLO my future yield on some Bitcoin options or some ETH options, or go 5x leverage on on DYDX and get potentially really high upside here, but I've protected my principal.
Because it's risk free, right? Like it becomes risk, like not risk free. You're risking your yield, but not your principal, and that's I think
Exactly.
a really, really key thing.
Exactly. And I think there's going to be some cool automated strategies to do, like where we can allow people to do that, where it's like, look, come in, deposit your 100 USDC, and we're going to give you a token that gives you 100 USDC back in 3 months. And we're also going to give you another token that's giving you leveraged upside to Bitcoin or leveraged upside to Ethereum or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, like as you talk about, like with TideFi, like so many different primitives plug into each other in different ways that create these systems. And I always think about DeFi, like the interconnectedness of all these applications. Like in TideFi, you have options markets and futures markets and strip bonds and a whole bunch of like tools that work together. And then people jump on top and they create strategies, and those strategies get packaged in a way that then is really, really simple. And I think about that a lot as well. Like, you got this complex beast, like even Pryzm is a complex beast underlying, but the key is going to be the consumer apps that we build on top that allow for like really simple use cases, but without that underlying complexity, how to understand how P or Y or all this stuff works. And that's where I get really excited.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that works in the way, like you will have banks that offer you simple products, or some of the products you can get offered on Robinhood or some of these other places. Like, actually, like a lot of complexity is obfuscated away. The inner workings of like how Robinhood integrates with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Bank of America and all these kind of investment banks that are doing all of the plumbing behind, or the product structuring behind. The end users don't really need to see. They just need to see something simple that says, okay, you're telling me that I can either have 100 Atom and just wait for my staking rewards over the next 3 months or 6 months, or I can have 100 Atom and I can be levered long Bitcoin going into the bull market, and I'm guaranteed to keep my 100 Atom. Like, that kind of stuff, I think is exciting for users.
Yeah, and we've talked about this at length, right? Like just some of the stuff that we're looking to do at Eclipse, and just thinking about like this top layer UX and this top layer like facilitation, I think is going to be really key. And I think being able to like work with you guys and integrate Pryzm is going to be really key. So Di, like I know we've got maybe another 10 or 12 minutes left on this podcast / spaces. We're all live, by the way.
Yeah.
I know we've got some questions from the audience, and there might be any kind of outstanding questions. I actually need to plug in my laptop, so I'm just gonna like duck down and plug that in, so I don't just get thrown out of the space. But yeah, in the interim, maybe like Di can run through some questions, and we can like dig into that. I think we've covered some pretty cool stuff already, so it's cool.
Cool. Yeah. We already covered a ton of crowd today. I think we got one question from the community. Cool. Maybe it's one for Oli. You can take that one.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. What would you say are the best way to take advantage of Pryzm create yield opportunities using stablecoin, or at least not having prior exposure to Cosmos ecosystem token?
Yeah, so this is something we get from our community a lot. Like, I think because we're a layer 1 blockchain built using the Cosmos SDK, and we're connected to IBC connected zones, like initially the easiest products to do were things like Celestia and Atom and Injective. I think some of the comments from people are like, okay, I'm worried about having price exposure to those assets, or those are assets that I'm not necessarily bullish on, but I still want to earn the Pryzm token or take advantage of the opportunities on Pryzm. There were ways of doing this beforehand using money markets, where you could deposit USDC and borrow some Atom or borrow some Celestia, and then use that to make profits in Pryzm and earn Pryzm tokens, and then go and repay your loan and get your USDC back and keep the profits. But that gets a bit complex for users. So what we've tried to do is onboard more interesting assets. So the first of these with stable coins is Neptune's USDT and USDC. Mm-hmm. And so Neptune, the reason we're really excited about the Neptune assets is they have, you know, the yield that you earn on those, on your USDC and USDT, can be extremely variable there, depending on borrowing demand in the underlying protocol. And so you can be earning yields of 40, 50, 60% on USDT or USDC. You know, recently those have kind of been the numbers that you're getting. So I would say those are a great place if you want to start, you know, trying out with Neptune's USDT or USDC. And very simply, you can either just turbo liquid stake, which is, you know, take your Neptune USDT and split it into a yield token and principal token, and then just stake the yield token, and then you're going to be earning Pryzm tokens plus your Neptune USDT plus your USDT yield, and you can merge them back together at any point to get your Neptune USDT. Or if you want to earn even higher rewards, you can just go and deposit them into the liquidity pool, and then you're providing stable coin liquidity and also earning, you know, the maximum amount of Pryzm photons, plus you're earning the underlying USDT and USDC yield. So I think that's the stablecoin opportunity at the moment. And then also, I guess, you know, alpha from our side, you know, we've mentioned it to one or two people before, but this coming week we're hoping to integrate Ondo's USDY. So that is a institutional grade yield bearing stable coin that's paying about 5% yield, hugely scalable, very secure, heavily regulated. So that's a lower yield, but a much more stable yield. And so if you're using that on Pryzm to, you know, earn Pryzm tokens and also earn your underlying 5% yield, I think that's a great choice. There's, you know, that will mean, like, if you hold, there's no reason just to hold USDC or USDT and not be earning a yield on it. So I think those are the best stablecoin opportunities. And then we are, you know, we're trying to figure out ways that we can allow people to use Pryzm and with Bitcoin and ETH and Sol, because I think those are the big ones that people keep asking us for. And so we've had some really exciting conversations with people. So we're hoping to have some solutions for those in the not too distant future. But hopefully that answers your question on the stable coins.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Hope that's helped the interns. Cool.
There's a million questions, by the way, so I might have to filter through them a little bit. I know there's a lot of Discord and Telegram ones, and we can't get through them all, so maybe handpick like a couple of the best ones.
Yeah. Maybe it's time for the viewer. You can drop the question here, and we can hear it, and we can. Maybe in the meantime, we can like zoom out a little bit and talk about the flywheel. So like how all the different like components of Pryzm like interact to, like, you know, create a sustainable flywheel for.
Yeah. So Pryzm, obviously Pryzm is what we try to build is a full layer one dedicated to yield and yield tokenization and trading. So the core components of that are allow people to tokenize and trade yield, creating liquid stake tokens, but also accepting external liquid stake tokens, creating an AMM and other trading tools for people to trade these tokens. So we created an AMM built into the blockchain, specialized for trading tokens with maturities. We created a module called Pulse Trade, which allows people to effectively DCA or TWAP tokens, which is something that's very popular in TradFi, but not something that's used that much in DeFi. And we also created a gradual auction module where you can gradually auction tokens for any other token you choose without needing to have any underlying liquidity. So you can swap any IBC token for any other IBC token without needing any underlying liquidity pool. And then we also created a liquid governance module where people can vote on underlying chain proposals with their liquid stake tokens. So you could vote on Atom proposals or tier proposals or inch proposals, doing that. So that's kind of like the main bits of the ecosystem we're creating. And then also we have Cosm, we have a smart contracts platform on our chain where we have people that are going to build interesting products on top of these sort of tools that we've created. So that's the aim there. And we've already had some people develop things. We're in really interesting conversations with other people as well. I think there's, the unique characteristics of Pryzm make it a great place to build an experiment. And obviously we had, Simon, you and I have had some really interesting chats about some of the things that Eclipse Pi can do on top of the Pryzm derivatives, to offer something completely unique to users. And so that's kind of like the flywheel that we have. And then revenue from all of these different parts goes into a treasury module. And the difference with Pryzm versus other products is like other chains or protocols might have either a buyback and burn or a distribute to stakers, or not even have a fee switch. With Pryzm, everything goes into the treasury module, and the Pryzm holders can decide what happens to it. Do they buy back and burn it? Do they distribute it to themselves? Do they distribute it to the community pool, et cetera, et cetera? So like putting flexibility into the power of Pryzm token holders, and trying to make it a revenue generating machine, basically, because I think cash flows speak louder than anything else.
Send 50% to Vitalik.
Exactly. So you can do that. You can send it all to the community pool and get someone to make a community pool spend request. But yeah,
you're not like the hub. You're not in the hub. Someone's paying themselves $500K a year and from the treasury pool.
Oh my
we didn't I've just been going through the questions. There's a fair few that seem a bit chat GPT and not super relevant. But one here maybe that's relevant. Like, how would you balance the needs of early users with the potential influx of new users once the project gains mainstream attention, to ensure that like the community remains supportive and engaged, but you can also like cater to new users, or are they just getting the benefit of the growth of the ecosystem overall?
I mean, so early users are basically because we don't have VCs, or we haven't done any angel rounds or raised any private capital. We have lots of tokens that we can distribute to. Normally people would sell 30% of their tokens to VCs. With us, like, we want all of those tokens to go to community, and so that's what we're trying to do, is like run reward campaigns where people who come and try out a new DeFi protocol and learn something new deserve to be really heavily rewarded in our view. And so that's kind of like what we're trying to do. And obviously, as the product, early users are getting much more tokens than people that come in 6 months time or something like that. So it's definitely very heavily skewed to people that come in early to be able to kind of like accumulate tokens in a much less crowded kind of environment. And at the moment, it's like we just ran finished our first campaign, and 5% of the token supply went to 5 million's worth of TVL. So I think that kind of like shows that people were, depends what, obviously I can't hypothesize about the token price, but people are going to 2x or 3x their money in 3 months and still have their principal protected potentially if they just chose to like normal turbo liquid stake or something. And the same opportunity exists now with our second phase. We have just over 5 million TVL, and we have at least 5% of the token supply going to people. And I think that campaign ends on the 1st of April. So trying to reward early users and make early users successful is kind of our plan and strategy.
So maybe in wrapping this up, like, let's like bring this to crescendo, which is what is coming up. So what is coming up for Pryzm? What can people participate in? What exciting things should like the community keep an eye out for, participate in? Just what is Pryzm got going on right now? What is the most exciting to really like? Simon, are you farming photons? I actually have started. I will not say I'm going to be a huge photon person. I'm in those stuck boats where I understand how to use DeFi. I actually don't use a lot of DeFi these days, and it's sad. It's just your bandwidth ends up really just like this. Like I don't invest in meme coins. I don't like. There's not a lot I do like in the space, which is kind of sad because I used to be like a power user when it came to DeFi. I have started farming photons, but I won't say I'm like the biggest like crazy user. Same thing. It's sad. Like same thing with Mars Protocol. Same thing with like a lot of these apps which I love and I've used them and I understand the flows and I've gone through all this stuff, but I'm not a power user because I just like my brain is just like I need to just like park something somewhere, forget about it, and like it's done for me because I just don't have any capacity after like when you're building. I'm sure you understand Ollie as well. It's like you want to sort of still use stuff because you need to stay relevant, but it's just so hard to like build and also be a user at the same time.
Yeah, people are like, what bags do you hold? And I'm like, honestly, like basically nothing. Like I can't my like if I start using up my bandwidth on like trading timeframes on trading view of shitcoins, then I'm just I just don't have the time to do it, and it will detract from. It'll make Pryzm a worse product. So I'm like, I can't.
I don't think people realize. Also, I don't think people realize as builders like how much you sacrifice to build things. Like, the amount of probably airdrops Ollie, myself have missed out on. The number of like meme coins. Like, I have friends that are not builders have made like millions, and they're not like they've been in DeFi for like 1 year. Like they've been in crypto for 1 year. They've been millions on meme coins and stuff, and like you see that over there, and you have to be able to turn that off to go. Actually, my mission is to build this. We're thinking long term. We're thinking about building products that are going to be used, and there's a chance that it doesn't work. There's a chance you don't make money from it, right? And that's the sacrifice you have to take as a founder. Whereas you're going into kind of a bull market where people are researching and making money on their bags over here, and you're like, it's much more than money. It's actually like we're building products. We're actually looking to build something in the future of the space, and it's a sacrifice you have to take. Like we miss out on airdrops, we miss out on all sorts of things that you maybe take for granted. But as a builder, you can't be in two worlds. You can't have 1 foot over here, 1 foot over here. It's just you can use apps to actually keep like informed of what's going on in the space and knowing like upgrades and things like that. But it's really hard to like be playing this game over here while building stuff. It just doesn't work being split with bandwidth. So I think it's really important consideration to take when you look at founders to understand what they really like give up sometimes to actually build out the visions and to build up the applications.
Oh yeah, like I always find it funny when you log into Telegram or Discord or Twitter and you're seeing people being like, just release your token. Like, why haven't you released your token yet? Just like get the token out, airdrop the token, and you're like, to me, it's like I would like nothing more than to like get the token out there and get it circulating. I'm literally sat in my office and my wife wonders what I'm doing for like the last 2.5 years or whatever. And you kind of like, and for me, like it's in a way, like it's easy to miss out on the airdrops or the other and people, making money on meme coins. Cause I'm just like, I rightly or wrongly, like I so strongly believe in what we're doing. I'm like, this is going to dwarf anything, like I'd be able to do in airdrops and meme coins. Like I want to create something that, we feel is the best product that we can create, and if you do a good job doing that, then the other bits will come. So I don't feel, whilst I do sometimes log into chats and see people that have just done a 10x on some shitcoin, and I'm like, I wish I'd YOLO'd some of that, but at the same time, like I feel easy, because I strongly believe in what we're trying to build. But yeah, like it's I'm the same. Like I feel like you need to try out DeFi protocols and be a DeFi power user and listen to all the podcasts and the rest of it as a founder, because you need to stay up to date on like what's out there and what's available and what's interesting. And it's trying to distill that from just listening to hype and narrative stuff that's like, oh no, put AI in your Twitter bio and your protocol's going to go nuts, or like mention DePIN or DeFi AI, or like or say modular in your name and you're suddenly going to like go through the roof. Like it's trying to distill those bits, but yeah, like
there's a difference between using an app to understand how it works. There's a difference between using an app to understand how it works versus being a power user, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
Hard to be a power user like when you're building. I had like a little stint where I was using Hyperliquid or I was using Drift a lot, because I have I came from, even before Terra, I was doing a lot of trading, and so I understand it. And you can't do that and build. It's not. You can't. So you can't be an active power user really and build and do it justice. So you kind of like can use it to understand how it works enough, but I think it's really, really challenging to be like an active, very active user while doing this. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I don't recommend it to a founder to be like playing over here and over here, you know?
Yeah, it's not so much the what I try and do is like, rather than trading actively on stuff, it's like actually logging onto a web app and figuring like how the flows work and what the protocol actually does, and like doing, testing it out with a small amount to see like what's going on, what's interesting, what's potentially working well, what you might iterate on yourself. And so it's that. And then in answer to the other, and I see Noam's other question is like doing that. Like I've got a filthy habit of like listening to podcasts on 2x speed and like trying to like condense as much of that as possible. And then occasionally it comes on the speaker and my wife's like, that sounds like something from another planet at 2x speed. You need to like, and all the passwords and stuff like that you end up hearing on these podcasts. But I think once you get
autism, okay? It's called autism.
Yeah, exactly.
Superpower.
But
okay,
but no.
maybe to wrap it up, what's coming up, right? Like what? Yeah, maybe
so,
just tied off.
Like, sorry. What can people expect? Yeah, but basically we have our season 2 of our campaign that's rewarding users. So that's going on at the moment. That lasts until the 1st of April. So it's the clock's reset earlier in the month, and the new 5% tokens got allocated to it, and there will be bonuses on top of that if we reach sort of TBL and KPI milestones. Then we also have our airdrop claiming, which is going to go live next week, hopefully. And then the week after that is going to be our token launch. So this is going to be the first time anyone has ever been able to buy the Pryzm token, because we've sold 0 to VCs or private sales, as I mentioned. So this is going to be the first opportunity for anyone to buy. Community gets to set the price of the token. So it's kind of like a full price discovery event where community chooses. And it's a type of launch that I haven't seen out there before. Like, people have done LBPs before, but with this launch, you're actually going to be able to use a DCA plus an LBP, which we think makes it really powerful, because rather than having to like sit there and figure out exactly when you want to buy, you're just going to be able to set a DCA order to gradually buy tokens below your maximum price. And so that kind of will give people a much more passive way of interacting with it and matching supply and demand. And so, yeah, the community will get to participate in that and decide the price of the Pryzm token, basically. So those are kind of like the key things.
We were working on something like that, actually. We were actually a couple of months ago. We were like, okay, it'd be really cool to set like limit orders and DCAs in for LBPs. We didn't continue with it, but that's actually really cool. It's a cool thought, because it's kind of mixing like the stream swap sort of idea with, the LBP, and allow people to kind of, sit back and not have to kind of watch it all the time, right?
Well, I think, yeah, like, I mean, see how ours goes, but if it goes all right and users enjoy it and it's simple to use, then yeah, like, you guys could definitely build a proper launch platform on it, because we're doing it as a one-off here. But I think it's the kind of thing that if it works and makes it fair, then I think it could be good.
Nice.
So those are the big things, and then just adding new products and new tokens is the roadmap. So USDY, we've got lots of other ones we want to do, and then adding new products. So that's kind of like key focus for us.
Cool. Nice. Guy, I think we're good to wrap up. Hey, do you have any final thoughts, any other things?
No, I think Solid we have already covered a lot, and Solid there's a lot happening like there, and we are early. So thank Ollie. I think it's have been an amazing deep dive. Before we wrap up, like, any final word for the community?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, like, thanks. You do Twitter Spaces and stuff like this, and actually, it's so nice doing things face to face. I feel like you have a much better conversation when you do it like this. So thanks very much for hosting, and also thanks very much to the community for tuning in and spending the time doing this on a Friday. Like, I always feel like the people that make the effort to tune into these things like deserve the alpha and the rewards and the rest of it, because they're grinding listening to these things. So appreciate everyone tuning in.
Yep.
And guys, if you're listening, make sure to go follow Pryzm on socials, join Twitter, join Discord, join the Twitter, the X as it's called now. If you're also watching this on YouTube, I know there's live streaming on Twitter and YouTube. Feel free to subscribe. We've been releasing a lot of educational videos on a range of different things in the space. So we did Deepin recently. We're going to do RWA. It's going to be a lot of different topics. So a lot of cool stuff, varied stuff to kind of learn about. So make sure to subscribe, and engage. But yeah, looking forward to see you guys more and more spaces, and looking forward to have more of these chats with you, Ollie. I think we always have pretty good chats, and we're keen to do some stuff with you guys. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Catch.
Cheers, everyone.
See you later.